BTC. It would be interesting to hear a discussion of TRL, shore stories, safe pointing, and such. Precept number 7 in Hubbard's redefinition of ethics, the way to happiness, seems awfully convenient. Seek to live with the truth. Lots of wiggle room there, even for a pathological liar such as Hubbard. Speaking of the way to happiness, another one of my favorites is number 11. Do not harm a person of good will, which is to say, if you define them to be not of good will, harm away as you see fit. Yeah, a discourse on Scientology ethics would be quite the thing because there would be a lot to talk about. So let's see if I can encapsulate all this real fast here. First off, you mentioned TRL, which is TR's training routine. Those are drills like those TRs, those communications drills where people stare at each other and do that bull baiting where they try to get each other to laugh and that sort of thing. Those communication drills are only some of the training routines that exist in Scientology, and TRL is training routine lie. And this is something I had never heard or seen when I was in Scientology. I only read about it on the internet. So I can't say 100% for sure that it's an actual training routine from Scientology. Somebody could have made it up, but I don't believe that. I believe that it is something that you'd find in Scientology, and specifically in the policies and drills for the Office of Special Affairs and for PR people in Scientology, because they have to lie and they have to do it convincingly. And that's a drill that trains a person to do that. And there are drills in Scientology that are somewhat like that are somewhat similar in that range. Like in the basic off-the-street communications course, what's called the Success Through Communications course, there's a drill called the No Answer, where you learn how to acknowledge or deal with somebody's question to you by not answering it and by misdirection. It's basically a drill in misdirection. So if that exists at the public level for somebody who walks right in off the street, then it's not hard for me at all to believe that there is a TRL to train PRs in how to lie. And this is a part of a policy letter Hubbard wrote about public relations and about acceptable truths, which I think most of you guys who have watched or listened to my channel have heard of before. An acceptable truth in Scientology is where you communicate something to a person that they're willing to hear or willing to receive, even if it's not the actual truth. It's something that sounds like the truth, could be the truth, skirts the truth, this sort of thing, right? And this is what Hubbard advises to use if the truth would be too damaging or harmful for a public relations person to just admit to, right? So they're trained in talking in acceptable truths. And this is where you also mentioned here in your question, shore stories. A shore story comes from the shore, like a ship, you're out on the sea and then you go to shore. A shore story is the story you tell the people, the natives, in some land that you've sailed to, as to why you're there or what you're doing or what your purposes or activities are. So a shore story is, and again, another form of an acceptable truth. And that, could be a lie, or it could be a misdirector, or it could be some way of skirting around what you're really doing there. And it's not like Scientologists are the only ones who do this, right? The military, I'm pretty sure this is a military term. Hubbard probably got this from the Navy, right? What's the shore story? What do we tell people, right? This isn't like Hubbard invented lying. But in Scientology, they've certainly used it to cover up Scientology's more nefarious or not so good things and activities that they've been involved in. And in fact, when they first landed in Clearwater back in the 70s and were setting up what is now the largest Scientology complex in the world, they had a short story, right? They were using, false names, false corporations, and acquiring property under false premises. And it's not necessarily illegal, but it is certainly, of questionable moral value. And that goes to the ethics of Scientology, the greatest good for the greatest number, as from their point of view. Because when you have a moral precept or a moral foundation of the greatest good for the greatest number, well, that is moral relativism. That opens, that is, you know, it's only from your own point of view that you could evaluate or judge whether something is the greatest good or not. You know, from just to go to the extreme, just to you know, make a very easy to understand example, from Hitler's point of view, exterminating, you know, the Jewish population was the greatest good, because he thought that the entire Jewish population was a cancer in humanity and they needed to be done away with, which of course is ridiculous, but that was what he really thought. And he got a lot of people to support him in that, to back up that view and accept that view, that the entire Jewish population needed to be done away with, that they were very, very bad people. So from that point of view, that was the greatest good. And you can get people to do all kinds of things if you can convince them that what they're doing is a good thing. So, you know, it's all relative. Of course, from the Jewish point of view, that was not the greatest good by any stretch. So that's how, you know, that kind of ethics works. But in Scientology, that is how their ethics works. That's the ethical principles that Scientologists don't just hear about or talk about, they're trained in it. Hubbard wrote at length about the subject of ethics and morals and justice, right? All around this view of the greatest good from the viewpoint of Scientology. So if you're ever wondering why it is that Scientologists can do what they do, can say what they say, can you know, fool people, knowingly deceive people, knowingly con people, that's why. That's why they do it, because they really have it in their head that Scientology is the greatest good and there is nothing more important in the entire world than that. Safe pointing. This again is a part of Hubbard's PR policies. Safe pointing is where you try to find people who will agree with you, who are opinion leaders. You want to set up safe points in the environment outside of the church who can be used to be as allies, to back you up, to, you know, if something bad happens, they'll have your back. They will spread good word of mouth about you, right? And this is really just PR 101. It wasn't like Hubbard's PR policies were something that he invented himself. The basic foundational view is whatever works to forward Scientology, no matter what it is, do it. It's okay to do, right? That's how Scientologists act, so.